Welcome, Odette, to Be All You Are, my podcast. And I'm so happy that you're here.
Me too. Thank you. It's so great to see you. It's been a while.
You too. I have already explained to the audience that's listening about the work that you do and how you and I became connected and the profound impact you've had on my life through the work that you do. And I would love for you to share your journey to doing this work, because I know you haven't always been doing it. And I know personally what your background has been. And I find it so fascinating. And I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was always an entrepreneur in the business world. Although my background is clinical and social psychology, I did a lot of company like flip flopping between the business world and then going. I'm not really satisfied. The money's good, so then I'll go and do social work stuff. And then the money's not that great, but I feel fulfilled. I'll go and do business. And so I did a lot of flip flopping through my many years, and I landed on as a business coach, speaker coach, and a storytelling coach. And so I got really connected to people's story, including my own. And that evolved into me having a super successful business, doing a lot of amazing events, and then coming to a place after this one amazing event I did in Tampa, Florida. And everyone's like, "My God, that was great! Like, you made it, you got to the top," kind of thing. And I was like, I feel completely unfulfilled, and I really don't want to do that again. And they're like, "What are you talking about? You need to like rinse and repeat." And I'm like, I can't, I don't have it in me anymore. It's not in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was feeling the out of alignment, I still thought, okay, I might as well just keep trying because everyone is telling me to try, and things just stopped working.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a client who said, "I'm going to a retreat in Costa Rica. It's ayahuasca." And I don't know if I'm like any of your listeners, but I had no idea what ayahuasca was. I Googled it, and it was like, I still don't get it. I still
Mm-hmm.
don't understand the concept of it. And perhaps to my, not to my detriment, because here I am today, but um, I did ayahuasca for a week, and it completely changed my life. And it wasn't an easy ride in that week. It wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, because I had to see who I was, right? All of who you are doesn't always mean the beautiful stuff. I had to face the dark stuff. I had to face the things that were, had warts and all. And I embraced it. And when I finished that retreat, I had this real feeling of something was missing on the inside. And it wasn't a missing, like, as in a good thing. It was like all the junk, all the drama, all the trauma felt gone. And I came back to Canada, and I knew that I was going to work in this capacity, but didn't know how. I ended up coming back to Costa Rica a bunch of times, touring the country, doing a lot of plant medicine, and then doing plant medicine in Canada. But they were all guided journeys, never really recreational. And that's when things started to shift for me, when I got in alignment and I actually stopped being a business coach. Remember, my last webinar was really fulfilling, and it was like, yay, I'm done. That sense of relief that I can now step into fully who I am and what I want to do. And I didn't really know it at the time, but it is this work. It was this much deeper work. So that's the journey of how I
Wow.
got here. Of course, the training and all of that stuff too. But
Yeah, of course. Odette, what's it like to witness people as they go through the experience of plant medicine journey? Like, obviously you and I had that experience together, and I've referred you to other people and you've had that experience with them. But I'm still curious, especially at the beginning when you first started doing it. It's one thing to go through it yourself, and it's another to hold space for somebody who's going through their own unique journey. What is that like?
that's actually a really great question. I've never been asked that question before, and it's actually probably one of the most profound questions, because I do it because I love it, right? And but no one ever says what does that feel like? And
Mm-hmm.
so, having had the experience, like, 100 times before I actually became guided for somebody else, um, I so in the training that I got, we did a lot of experiential, a lot of hands-on on learning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I actually went out the first time on my own, and I was with another guide, it was he was a beautiful soul. He's still a client. I think that we've done 10 ceremonies now. It was probably the most challenging experience of my life to witness someone in his particular case just really nervous to let go of the resistance, to let go of the control, um, and just to hold space in letting that person, literally it was 4 or 5 hours of hanging on, and all of a sudden to witness the dissolving of the, I'm not going to say the ego, but the dissolving of that resistance, to just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And then 2.5 hours of pure bliss, where there was a deep interaction between us as well, not like a dialogue, but an energetic connection. And it was so profound. So holding space for someone who's afraid, which is very normal, who's in resistance. Most of my clients are like me, who want to be in control. Um, to watch that just go, I don't want this anymore, is that turning point in their transformation. And that's when I almost like, I just go, ah, see, this is what I've been saying all along, like in my head. Not the I told you so, but just
Yes.
the, this is what I'm talking about. And so
Hmm.
when people emerge from that experience, hours later, and they're like, 100% of the time they say that is not what I expected.
Hmm.
And there's this beautiful sense of who they truly are.
Hmm.
And I just sit in awe for them, because I know the feeling of before and after.
Hmm.
And it is, and it's not always, oh my God, I feel like blissful and angels are singing to me. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's like, wow, that was a really challenging experience.
Hmm.
But I'm so glad. I feel like I've cleaned up a lot of gunk that's been in my heart and in my soul that would never have come out had I not done.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like really witnessing something so intimate for a person, really, because it's not, you know, the like really the point of going on that journey is because you need support in going somewhere you haven't been before, or you haven't been in a really, really, really long time, right? And to witness that is like quite like an intimate thing, you know?
Very, and that's a
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really good word.
Mhm.
I hesitate to use that sometimes because you're working one to one with people or whatever, and I don't want to give that wrong impression. But it
Yeah.
is one of the most profound experiences that I had was working with an older gentleman. He was 60, 68 or 69 at the time,
Mhm.
and he had said to me near the end of the experience, he goes, I know this is weird, and I don't really want to ask you this, but can you just hold me?
Mhm.
Now, in this work, there is an element of touch. There is an
Mhm.
element of consensual. It has to be all. I don't just go and start doing body work on people. And I'm like,
Mhm.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. To hug somebody,
Yeah.
because he never had that as a child. He never
Mhm.
experienced that, and to be able to feel vulnerable enough and open enough. And this was the end of the medicine. It wasn't like in the thick of it. To
Yeah.
say, hey, you know what? Can you just do that? And that, had I said no, or if, because there's a lot of clinical ways you can do certain medicines, that would have been lost on him. And so
Mhm.
that changed his life. It
Yeah.
completely changed his life, especially at that age. You'd
At
think,
that age, I know, which is also so beautiful, like that it's not ever too late um go on that journey and to connect with yourself in that way. It's never too old to do that.
no. And
Yeah.
I started when I was 52. My first ceremony
Mhm.
was 52, and I never partaked as a kid
Yeah.
in psychedelics. So
Mhm.
we didn't call it back then. I didn't partake in mushrooms or anything like that. All
Yes,
in
yes.
in math class. I never did
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so yes, it was like, yeah, that a new experience for you at the age of 52.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm glad you brought up a specific example because in my I recorded another podcast episode about my own experience and my own journey, and I did talk a little bit about what a plant medicine ceremony looks like.
Mhm.
But I would love for you to walk us through that. Like, what is it from end to end? What happens?
So so plant medicine, a ceremony starts when you say yes to doing the ceremony, because
Hmm.
that's when things start to shift, as you know. when
Mhm.
we're in our no and we're in our fear and we're like, I can't do this, and whatever excuses we have. But when we say yes, then all of a sudden the universe starts providing for you both challenging experiences, maybe, or just opening up the vortex for you
Mhm.
to start letting your guard down, letting some resistance down, and allowing the medicine to start doing its work. And so the first step is I need to get to know you. You need to get to know me. So there's
Mhm.
that. So it starts with a family history intake questionnaire, which is quite detailed. As
Mhm.
you know, it can take a while to
Yes.
fill it out. But it gets to the nitty gritty. We all have these big boulder moments of, oh, but I went through this divorce, or this, my children were born, or the death of my parents, or whatever. Those are big moments, but it's the little moments that we don't really remember growing
Mhm.
up as a child, because most of our trauma and drama starts when we're, um, well, it can start ancestral prior to us being born, but,
Mhm.
just of this conversation, it starts when we're kids.
Yeah.
And so, and it's the smaller things that we make meaning of, and then
Mhm.
we live our life today based on those experiences. But they're basically the story. So it goes into my storytelling,
Mhm.
you know, business back in the day is we
Mhm.
tell ourselves stories. So once we know what those stories are, we're then able to cultivate what is the intention for the ceremony? What is the medicine that's going to be used for the ceremony? Um,
Mhm.
what's going to show up for you before the ceremony and during the ceremony, typically based on those stories, the storyboard that you've been telling yourself your entire
Mhm.
um, a lot of those stories will dissolve before ceremony, which is so good because we don't want it. We're not trying to slay everything, slay the dragon. It's um, what's that next step that your inner healer is allowing for you to be healed. And so
Mhm.
when we do the pre-work, a lot of that stuff can go, and then we get more closer to the nucleus of of your trauma, drama, wound, challenge,
Mhm.
and that is what makes it beautiful. So then the medicine can come in more easily to do what it needs to do. So
Mhm.
the ceremony, the way I like to do them is they're a day long. We start in the morning. You're obviously given a treatment guide and you're prepped for what to expect. We really set an intention. And sometimes an intention is I'm just going to let the medicine do whatever it needs to do.
Mhm.
Come with a laundry list of all these things that they want to have happen.
Yes.
And then we spend the day, you spend the day inside of the medicine. I spend the day guiding that and holding
Mhm.
that space. And depending, sometimes it's one medicine, sometimes it's two medicines, sometimes it's three. Um, and then we just navigate what that looks like for you and spend the day um, going through that experience. And I'm there to hold space for whatever shows up for you. And it most importantly is to keep you safe,
Mhm.
you feeling secure, loved, connected, grounded.
Mhm.
And then and you're going to hit a peak. And so I like to do different medicines so that it's not just like up and down. We
Mhm.
kind of, you go up, you stay up a little bit, and then you come down really slowly and gently, hopefully land on a bed of feathers rather than a bed of rocks.
Yes, totally.
And then we sit in that ending of it and start the integration process. Um, I don't like to get to people to get too heady because you're already in your head enough. Spend that time, um, at the end of the day, at end the night, to just be on your own, to really relinquish the stuff that was gone,
Mhm.
and to allow yourself to not overthink, but just to
Yeah.
feel what it feels like to have that stuff gone. And then the effects last for a couple days for sure. You can drive the next day and all sorts of
Yes.
things. But yeah, so that's sort of in a nutshell what the experience is about without getting too specific, because your experience
Yeah.
is if you were to do it again, it would be a
Be different
completely
than
different
last
experience.
time. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
it's so funny. And even now, like when I talk to some people and they're like, "Oh, and then after 4 hours, I was like ready. I took off my mask." And I was like, "4 hours?" I was like, I was under for 8 hours. And even then, I remember you being like, Kena, it's time."
yeah, yeah,
Oh my goodness.
well, for hydration and
Yes.
and for a little bit of movement. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, some people, those perhaps might, they might be less sensitive to the medicine. Not that you're saying,
Yes.
but a lot of people are heady. Like, okay, I'm done. Well, ooh, I had someone come out in 2.5 hours. I'm like, wow.
Wow. And want their notebook so they could start taking notes immediately, right?
Oh yeah. I've done several hundred ceremonies, and I've seen it all, and I I'm always amazed every time I do a ceremony. It's like, wow, I never thought that that would come out. But um, yeah,
That's so, I love that. Actually, this is good. It's a good segue because you've done hundreds of ceremonies at this point, and I'm curious if you have some highlights in terms of lessons that you've learned going through this process over the last 4 years, of a few years of witnessing, you know, people going through ceremony. Were there sort of some highlights for you that you have sort of taken and applied to your own life?
absolutely. So there's I, double whammy because I have the experience of my own personal journeys, and then
Mm,
being the guide. Number one is just have zero expectation.
mhm,
What's interesting, when I have someone who does it the first time, they have more fear or trepidation. Not always. They have expectations, but
mhm,
not quite the same. The second time, they have much greater expectations
mm.
because they're like, well, it went like this, so therefore it's going to be like that. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Because you have to think of it as layers as well.
Mhm.
So you go in for your first ceremony, and that's why the preparation is so important, to kind of get rid of some of those layers that aren't necessary, that they can just kind of fluff off. Like, I know that
Mhm,
sounds crazy, but just let go of some of the meaningless things and let's get to
mhm,
the core. Um, and is just forget about the expectations, forget about the world for the day. you're we're all, you know what, we're all super important, but we're really not that important. you know
mm.
Nobody needs to get a hold of us all the time.
Yeah.
um and the control thing, it's like, what are you really afraid of when people are get going the medicines? They don't want to slip into, let's say, that state of unconscious state, because they're afraid of what's going to happen, what's going to show up. Well, there's a trust element that your inner healer, we all have an inner healer, is going to only allow the healing that you can handle. So it's not about you're going to be, crushed and sent to the black hole of and never come out again kind of thing. It's like, oh my God, I had a friend who, but they were ready for that. So your
Yeah.
inner healer knows, and you need to trust that your inner healer is going to allow whatever the medicine to do, that you're ready for. Which
Mm,
also is that next important thing is, um, we all, they're all people. A lot of people are worried about it being a dark journey. Well, as human beings, there's many sides to us, and in our society, we mask sadness or anger or fears with medication,
mhm.
antidepressants, anti-anxieties, alcohol, drugs, sleep, sex, whatever it is. We mask those feelings. And
Yeah.
so we actually don't know what to do with ourselves when we have those feelings.
Mhm.
Well, what if you can just scream into a pillow or cry, allow for those emotions? Because we're multidimensional human beings.
Yeah.
So people don't want to feel those things, but the way through something is you need to feel it.
Yeah.
Another element is, you're not going to think your way through this. We talked about that, right? Remember,
Mhm,
it's like there's no way your brain is going to be able to compartmentalize what the experience is. So you need to feel it inside of your body.
mhm,
And we're also a society where we're cut off between our head and our heart. Like, this highway is often under construction.
mhm.
So we don't want to feel. But that's where the healing is. And the trauma is in the body. It's in the cellular memory. It's not in our head.
Mhm.
So, and just finally, I mean, I could talk forever on this, but we often fear more about fearing the thing rather than the thing. So,
Yes, it's the feeling of fear that we dread most of all. I mean, it's funny. I think what I love about all the things that you're talking about is they are they're obviously analogies for life, right? And it's just that in the ceremony, you're confronted with them in a much more intense way. But they're all analogies for life, like knowing that you have an inner healer and
yeah,
letting go of expectation. Like these are all things that um like allow us to live life in a more full way and to embrace life in, like, as you said, with all aspects of our humanity.
Exactly. And people say, for instance, they come into a ceremony and they think or they want or they come for a reason. So
Yeah.
let's say you feel stuck in a career and relationship and you feel that stuckness, right? Um, that might not be what shows up in the in the day in the ceremony.
Hmm.
Or it might be something with with our parents or whatever. And they're like, I often hear, well, I'm surprised. I actually never came to me
Yeah.
because that's actually not the thing that's really holding you back. Something
Hmm.
else is holding you back. But we focus. So I was talking to a client today about that. When you focus on right at what the pain or the struggle that you have right in front of you, that's just a camouflage
Hmm.
for the deeper issue and the deeper wound. And
Hmm.
what's also wonderful, what I see more often than not, is how beautiful people feel about themselves during the ceremony and after. And I
Yeah.
think that it's the self discovery piece. People don't want to see themselves,
Hmm.
and they're afraid that they're going to see something they don't like. And I say, well, that's great because then you can get rid of it. But maybe you won't see that side of you. Maybe you're going to see the side that everybody else sees, but just that's who you are at your core, which is this
Hmm.
loving, incredible human being.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's interesting that way because we're told so much, whether it's directly or indirectly with messaging, that we're not good enough. We don't have enough. We're not being enough. We're not showing up. We should be better. We could be better. When really you're perfect just who you are, no matter what.
Yeah, and I love that, and I love how you've been talking a lot about that inner healer, that you have that power within you, right? And one of the things that I talk about a lot on this podcast and with the women in my programs is how we connect to that inner voice, right? So it's all sort of that inner world, the healer and the guide and all that, that inner voice. And I'm curious how you coach or guide people post ceremony to reconnect to that voice. Because I think that's always like an interesting thing of like, how do we silence the noise? How do we reconnect to that inner knowing inside of us?
Well, we're all born with intuition and a gut instinct, right? Like
Hmm.
just you know. But growing up as a kid, and as well as in school and all sorts of things, we're taught in a way, not directly, but
Hmm.
to not go with your gut instinct. That has to be science based, or it has to be mathematical based, or it has to be a reason, it has to be logical.
Hmm.
When none of that really matters. What matters is your gut instinct and your intuition. So all of it really is getting acquainted again with your intuition and
Hmm.
retrusting in yourself. And so most people will make decisions out of fear, not out of trust. Oh, I can't do this because of the money, or I can't do this because it's not the right time.
Mm.
You're in business, you hear it all, right? You probably see,
Yeah.
but but then we don't go, it's what I really want though. So we don't listen to what we really want. We listen to
Mhm.
what we think we should have, what we think we should do based on society or our conditioning or our upbringing. We're also taught to not enjoy life and things as much as we have the potential to do so.
That's a big one.
That's actually a huge one, and I just kind of
Mhm.
said that. I don't know where that came from.
Mhm.
I don't
But
ever
it's
say that
huge.
before, but it's true
Yes.
because it's not the right time, or the it's such a shame how we are conditioned to grow up to be almost robotic in
Yeah.
life rather than free flowing and free spirited, because that's all when we're all kids. Take a look at your own kid, how free spirited they are.
Yes.
Have intuition and a gut and just allow for it, and then it
Oh my
becomes
gosh, that's so true. There's I was like actually just saying to my group the other day how we have a wildish nature, right? Like we are the same as every other living thing on earth. And, but we've created this world that is so artificial in so many ways. And we've like boxed ourselves off that we aren't like a part of that world, right? Like we're separate from it. And then, but what the problem with that is, we're boxing ourselves in, and we're like, and on the outside of it is that like freedom and like just pure, the joy that you see in a child, that for grown-ups we don't even know how to go there, a lot of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because we lose that playfulness.
Hmm.
And we can talk about this all day long, but really the answer is, what is it that you truly want? I can
Want.
guarantee that 99% of the world are not showing up in the happiness and the joy that they truly want, because
Yeah.
they're just so dictated by the things that they feel they have to do.
Yeah.
And it really is, it is a shame to
Yeah, it
to say.
is. And I love what you said about like and I think this is such a simple distinction. And it's like somebody could use this when they're making a decision, is like, am I making this decision based on fear or on trust? Like, I love that you said that because it's quite clear, it's almost like whenever you're about to make a decision, and if you're like, I don't know, is this my intuition is like and maybe you don't have that relationship with your intuition, but you can notice if you're making a call based on a sense of fear of something
Mhm.
or a sense of trust. And I love that you said that.
Yeah, and I think people need coaches, and like yourself, they need to
Hmm.
be some type of community.
Hmm.
Like I had a call with a lady for the retreat that I'm putting on, and she said to me today, it was very typical.
Hmm.
Oh my, I totally trust that the money's coming. I get, like, the money's there, da 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 da. And then, so I said, okay, so here's the payment link. What do you, oh, well, hang on a second. I, I need to check that,
Hmm.
and then in the same breath, it's like, yeah, but I trust that it'll be, so I said, what's the block then? If you
Hmm.
trust, then you trust.
Hmm.
But, well, there's no fear, there's no block. And so people don't know that there's a block.
Yeah.
And so there's that disconnect. So we distilled it down to find out what that core fear is.
Yeah.
And that's where we lack that self trust.
Hmm.
And so when we can address that we're honest. The step number one is you need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter to me whether you trust yourself or not. What matters is that you want to make a transformation, right? It's not.
Yeah.
And so um, step number one is just to be honest with yourself.
Hmm.
So this is what I'm really scared about.
Hmm.
And and that's okay. Then you can make a change. And most people don't trust their gut anymore. They don't.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And, actually, just this week in my group, I asked women to think of a time when they did trust their gut and what came
Mm.
out of it. And as they were sharing their stories, their faces lit up, and they like were just like, you could just tell their energy went up a bunch of levels because there was
Yeah.
this sense of like flow and freedom in making that decision, and how it was against what like they would have thought if they were to like do a pros and cons list or try to
Yeah.
be rational. It was against that, right? And what like the beautiful things that led to.
Mhm.
um and so I was asking them, like, what if you trusted yourself more of the time? I won't even say all of the time because that can feel like a challenge when we're not used to it, but like, what if you trusted yourself more of the time? What would that feel like?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly. So sometimes it's like, okay, so create that scenario
Hmm.
where you trust asking your boss for a raise, that you deserve it. And
Yeah.
women are famous for this, right? Like, they just
Yes.
they want, I don't know how many times I hear this over the course of my 20 years of coaching when I'm offering a coaching program or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, I have to go ask my husband.
Yeah.
And I honestly, okay, maybe because I've been single for most of my life,
Hmm.
raising kids on their own. And
Hmm.
I kind of go, oh,
Yeah.
because it's not, why ask for permission?
Hmm.
Because they don't feel confident and they
Yes.
don't trust themselves on the inside.
Yes.
all of my male clients, not one man has ever said that. They
Yeah.
might have said, look, I'm going to consult with my wife that I'm doing this.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. I'm going to consult. It's very different. That's right.
it is, it's
Yeah.
totally different. And why do we ask for permission?
Hmm.
And the thing is, because we just don't trust ourselves and we lack the confidence. And
Oh my gosh, Odette, this is so good. You know what's funny too is that so you're talking about coaching, and then I was actually had a call a few months ago with an executive coach. And so he coaches high level CEOs in the tech industry. And he and I were just having sort of a check in conversation. And he was telling me that very similar to your experience and to what you're saying, that the men have a conversation, they know what they need. They're like, yep, you're the guy. I know I need this. It's right for my business. It's right for me. Sign me up. The women who are also equally senior level, equally, experienced, leading teams, all of it, no different. They need time. I'm not sure. I have to see if it fits in our budget. Like, there's so much waffling. Like, I need to talk to my CEO. Like, there's all of these things that happen. And he shared that with me as a way of almost like, encouraging me do this work because it's really needed.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. And then, but then we also need to, as representations of those women who are making decisions, we need to make those decisions as well.
Ourselves. That's right. We have to embody it. It's so true. It's like, it's such a good way to not let ourselves off the hook, right? Because you can't be asking other women to do it and then not do it yourself.
Right, exactly.
Um, okay, I want to shift to another question for you, Odette, and that is, in all your years of healing and healing, your own personal traumas and your own experience and everything, um, do you have any tools or, activities or things that you do when you are feeling in that, either dysregulated or stuck or just low, feeling low? Are there
Mhm.
things that you do to bring yourself to a higher place?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I wish I could say I don't feel dysregulated. I don't feel my, you know, and it's funny. I do have some clients who go, "You feel like that too? You've got that going on?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm a human being.
Yeah,
Yes,
of course.
you teach what you learn, or you teach what you know how they
Hmm.
feel.
Hmm.
So we actually have to have more of it.
Hmm. It's
Right?
true.
I'm like, sometimes I'm like, universe. Well, the other day I was like, all right, universe, no more. You have got to stop. So that's one thing that I do is I have regular conversations with the universe, just channeled through me. I'm like, I have argued with the universe. I have yelled at the universe,
Yeah.
and I have said, this is exactly what I want. This is what I'm needing, and no messing around now. And it works. Honest to God, it does. Like, I got a couple scenarios. I practice EFT, so emotional
Yeah.
freedom technique.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to do this myself for clients. The
Yes.
reason why I took the training program was so that I could learn it for myself.
Mhm.
So I've been doing a lot of tapping.
Mhm.
It's been wildly a game changer for me. Um,
Mhm.
I do breath work. So
Mhm.
the types of breath work, holotropic breath work is something that's really important because it moves the trauma.
Mhm.
And it can also feel like a bit of a psychedelic experience. And I'm not talking about like box breathing and things like that, although those are important for in the moments. But full on breath work that you can do for 5 minutes or an hour.
Yes.
Um, some meditation. I love the and I just want to give some simple things because like you can't just drop and do breath work in the middle of a day. The Ho'oponopono prayer is something super powerful. That is, you get into a state of, it's I thank you, I love you, I forgive you, and it's a beautiful, really simple message. So that if I'm talking to someone that's challenging, I will think of the Ho'oponopono prayer, or
Mm.
it gets me into a space of acceptance and gratitude and love. And so that's something that's really simple. Um, I I'm not. I never used to be the greatest meditator.
Mhm.
Now what I do. So there's another thing that you can do. It's called just non-doing. So
Mhm.
there's meditation, of course. Um, there's non-doing where you're literally just sitting and not doing anything. which is really
Mm.
hard for multitasking,
Yeah.
busy moms and stuff like that. But it's so refreshing. And
Mm.
and so for my non-doing has to include a cup of coffee or something. And I'll just sit there and I will just drink my coffee and have a quiet moment and just not do. And my mind might race of 1,000 things I need to do. And it's like, oh, I got to get it done. Um, there's that. Another thing is nature. Now,
Mm.
I was thinking about this the other day. We have postage size backyards if we even have a backyard. If you're
Yeah.
really busy, where's the nature? You have to go to nature,
Yeah.
and so we got to go to the park, whatever. But it's so important to get your feet in the dirt and play in the rain and like feel the rain, feel the sun, feel the earth, feel trees and things like that, because they have such an energy to them, and we
Hmm.
are getting more and more disconnected from nature. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Costa Rica, was to be inside of nature.
Yeah.
Um, so just some of the simpler things
I
like
love those. Those are really helpful. And I want to, get the prayer from you that you mentioned or find out where to, so that I can link to it in
yeah.
the show notes so people can find it.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
wish I could spell it, but it's Ho'oponopono prayer.
I know. That's why I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to need to follow up on that one.
Oh, Hoopopni, something
I
like
know.
that. It's like,
Yeah, I think we'll just put it in the show notes.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um, it's funny. I mean, I love all the things you said, and nature for sure is on that list. But it just made me think of my daughter the other day. We were driving and it started raining, and it hasn't rained in a long time. And she was like, I love the rain, Mom. I miss it. And I just thought it was so like, again, when we talk about how kids, like, I think all I noticed about the fact that it was raining was that I had to turn on my windshield wipers. Like, that was like what I felt, right? Like, I didn't feel a connection to the rain. I felt like, oh, I need to turn on my windshield wipers now, you know? And but for her, it was like, oh, it's the rain. And she like had a connection to it, you know?
So then I encourage you next time is, well, you're obviously in the car, so stop the car or get out of
Yeah.
the car whenever you can and just stand there and get wet.
Yeah.
Just get wet.
Yeah.
And so I do that a lot here in Costa Rica. Well, when it's rainy season, you don't have a choice. But a lot of my friends are like, oh my God, it's
I
raining. Like
want to get wet. Yeah.
going to walk when it's raining, and it is
Yeah.
so cleansing. Like I can't,
Yes.
or the snow. Like I just, yeah, it's
Yeah. I agree. I think that's so important. Um, Okay, so I want to shift a little bit because this podcast is called Be All You Are, a Midlife Awakening podcast. And I really called this podcast because I was having conversations with women who were coming to me and saying, I'm having a midlife crisis. And I'm like, I don't know that it's a crisis. I think you're waking up to something, that like that knowing inside of you. And it feels a bit like a crisis because it feels disruptive, but it's actually not a crisis. And I know you hinted at your age, Odette, because you said that you were, you started. Um,
87. Just kidding.
well, I know that's not true. But anyway, I would love to hear about how you yourself personally are experiencing, life at this stage.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always grown up with the fear of getting older for whatever
Mhm.
reason.
Mhm.
Fear of dying. I had that as a kid, and just getting older. So the um, the experience that I had at 52 with doing the ayahuasca was not a rock bottom moment or
Mhm.
anything. My rock bottom moment was I think 10 years prior to that or something like that. When both of my parents died at the same time, I became an orphan. That's when you really confront a little
Yeah.
more of your mortality, when your parents
Mhm.
are dead and you're like, wow, it's like I'm on my own. It doesn't matter. You can
Mhm.
have 87 brothers and sisters, but you're like, they're gone. And I
Yeah.
didn't really have a great relationship with them either, but so I found that really kind of fascinating.
Mm.
Um, and as my kids started to age, my kids are 26 and 24, which makes me gulp a lot because I'm like, wow, where did that happen?
Mhm.
Um, turning 50 was a challenge, but turning 55, 56, 57 has been a bit of a creeper for me. I'm going to be dead honest. I wish I was one of those women that were like, oh, I don't care how old I am. It's just an age. It's just a number. And I'm
Mhm.
like, no, it is a number.
Yeah.
Like it's a significant number. Okay. And so I had speaking to a client today, her 65th birthday is coming up
Okay.
and it's a monumental. So we were talking about the age thing.
Hmm.
So I have struggled with that because I don't want to get older because I don't feel 57.
Yeah.
I don't really know what I feel, but I feel in my 30s. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, let's do this and that. And sometimes I like to my kids, I'm like, yeah, let's go to the concert or whatever. And like,
Yeah.
really? I'm like, yeah. And so I don't know if I act my age, which is
Mhm.
probably, a good thing. Um, but I think the my midlife crisis really came when when my parents died. I was in a blended family relationship that ended. I had just started my new coaching company, and then I got really sick, and it all happened within 6 months. And that was my rock bottom moment. And I thought, how am I going to climb out of this? This
Mhm.
feels like a crisis,
Mhm.
and it was a crisis. But in order to be a butterfly, you need to be the caterpillar. And
Mhm.
so we have to have the crises in our lives in order to merge above them.
Yes.
And so, if you can look at things that way, that it is an awakening, you and I get that. But to people
Mhm.
who haven't got that awakening, woken up enough, they go into crisis, they stay in crisis, and then they keep staying in crisis and staying in crisis until either a bigger crisis happens,
Mhm.
or they die. Most
Yeah.
people don't have an awakening.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it doesn't matter what age you are. I have a lot of clients who are in their 20s and having awakenings. And I'm like, I wish I did too at that time.
Yeah.
But but it's really, an awakening is very, very hard
Mhm.
because you have to abandon everything that you've known. You
Yeah.
have to give up the safety nets that we have had there, and all of our stories, all of our fears and all of our doubts were our safety net that kept us protected.
Yeah.
Might have kept us small and held us back, but we would rather hang on to what little we have in those feelings because it's the known.
Mhm.
And so an awakening in a crisis, whatever, is about stepping into the unknown. And
Yes.
most people don't want to do that. And it's
Yeah.
very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So
Do you think, Odette, that if they knew, like what we're talking about now, that if they knew, like if someone were to tell them, yes, you're in crisis, like not to deny what you're experiencing right now. Yes, it feels scary. Yes, there's a lot of unknown, like, there's the vast unknown in front of you. Um, but if you choose to embrace this, like if you choose to not even embrace, because it's like, who wants to embrace a crisis? But like, if you choose to keep going and keep growing, then your metamorphosis, like, that butterfly is waiting, like it's waiting for you. And um, do you think that that is part of what is missing, is that nobody is, like, they're not hearing that message, and so that it's like, well, I don't know what else to do but to like swim around in this crisis indefinitely, or tread water in this crisis indefinitely?
well, I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that it's about facing who you are.
Yeah.
And no, most people don't want to do this. I've been coaching for a long time, and and also in this psychedelic space is a little bit different because usually people I talk to, they're ready for that transformation. But
Yeah.
you need to face you, and you need to face that the decisions maybe perhaps that you've made aren't necessarily the ones that serve your highest purpose, or maybe you've outgrown them. Like, how many women do you know, or people that do you know, stay in a marriage because it's easy and convenient, but it's not what they want? And
Mhm.
then they make up all sorts of reasons and excuses.
Yeah.
So it's easy to say those words just to embrace it. But what if it's so? What I like to do is just break it down into bite-sized chunks and say, what's that next right step for you that would make you still feel safe, but would
Yeah.
be growth?
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, and then we really dissect, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And it's the simplest things. It's not about quitting a job or leaving a relationship or whatever.
Mhm.
It could just be joining a Zumba class, or starting to, whatever, like something as
Yeah.
simple as that. And it
Yeah.
seems silly
Mhm.
to some, but that's the baby step. So we need to rebuild that courage,
Yes.
we can actually have the life that we want. Because when I ask someone, what do you want? What do you really want? I'll get a laundry list of the things they don't want. And
That's so true. Women have such a hard time actually saying what they want. It's true. Yeah.
so, um, yeah, so it's challenging. It takes time, but
Mhm.
all I can do sometimes, the only way I can get through my crises or whatever, there's nothing to do, is just to sit and to breathe and to feel it. And
Mhm.
this is too much for most people, is that they can't just sit and feel it
Yeah.
because it hurts. But I can promise them, like I do, that if you go through that and you breathe 5 more times and go through that and feel that
Yeah.
discomfort, you will be out the other side of it far faster than trying to deke around it. But we don't want to do that.
You know what? I think there's a famous quote, and if I'm gonna have to look up, and if unless you know who said it, but basically this person said that most of society's problems come from the inability of people to be able to sit in a room alone and just like feel their feelings. Like most of our problems as a
Right?
society come from that issue.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know the quote, but that is
Yeah.
exactly it, is to just
Yeah.
be on your own with those thoughts. Um, and to we need to embrace that we're multifaceted,
Hmm.
and to yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing more beautiful for me to be in a crisis, to have shit blow up in my face, because I know now that that just means there's something on the other side of it, and I can lean into that trust. Doesn't mean I won't be doing a kicking and screaming sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't mean I won't be angry, but I know that on the other side of that anger is a bigger, it's a bigger breakthrough, and that's how I live my life now.
Oh
Is
my
okay,
God.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
what you just said, Odette, is huge and it's so powerful, right? Like if we all had that awareness that I'm going through this, it feels like a crisis, but if I can hang on, there's something more waiting for me on the other side. And I trust that. That is like, my goodness, it's like sets you free.
it does, and the only
Hmm.
thing you need to do is just breathe through it. Just
Hmm.
breathe,
Hmm.
breathe, breathe. Lots of breathing, and then for
Which
me now,
is what you also tell us
tell
in ceremony, right? Like it's again such an analogy for life. It's like that's what you I remember when I had trouble letting go at the beginning of my ceremony, you just kept telling me to breathe. And I remember just like focusing completely on my breath as a way to just sit with whatever it was that I was feeling so that I could get to the other side of it.
yeah, and I remember that, because I remember the moment you did, because not everybody does, right? The
Mm,
moment you did, it just it became, well, what appeared on the outside, just a much more blissful
yes.
experience. I could feel you letting go, that dissolving of that control,
Yes.
and because you can control a journey. And
Hmm.
it makes it a very not comfortable journey, though.
Hmm.
But you can let that go. And
Hmm.
what I try to help people who are struggling with that is, picture your heart, breathe into your heart. So you're breathing in love into your heart, and then you breathe out. You see your heart expanding, and you see
Hmm.
your heart contracting. So you're actually breathing in through the heart, and
Yeah.
so that really gives people visual and something to anchor their
Hmm.
thought on, rather than the thought of the monkey brain. They just they see their heart. Okay.
Yeah.
Or picture your favorite person or your favorite pet in front of you, smiling at you. Just breathe and look at them, stay connected. And that takes you down so many notches.
I love
Anxiety.
it. Yeah. So, Odette, I wanted to ask what is coming up next for you. So, how can people connect with you, work with you, learn about more about what you're doing? Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways. One is I have a retreat, a week
Hmm.
long retreat coming up in Costa Rica.
Hmm.
It's May 26th to June 1st. And in this retreat, it's a retreat I created for one that I wanted to go to, and I
Hmm.
could never find one, so I created it. And it does have a psychedelic component to it, Dave, but it also has cacao ceremony and sound healing. It has a sweat lodge, which is a very deeply spiritual experience
Hmm.
in indigenous cultures,
Hmm.
as well as a lot of free time and a lot of beach and jungle experiences and all of that. And you're with like-minded people who are ready for that deeper transformation, because you can then borrow from them their
Mm-hmm.
healing and their journey. So it becomes a beautiful experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the retreat. And I also work privately one-to-one with people. So if people are interested, the first step is always filling out a form and application,
Mm-hmm.
and then having a conversation with me to make sure that you're ready for the retreat or private or whatever. And then we go from there to see what is the best fit for you. So the retreat's called the Soul Journey Retreat because to me
Okay.
this experience is about deepening at the soul level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
It sounds amazing. I will make sure to include the links to your website and to the retreat and everything in the show notes here, so you'll find them there. A couple more questions before we wrap up, Odette.
yeah,
The first one, and this is a question I ask all of our guests, what do you think it means to be all you are?
yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go back to one of the things that I said at the beginning or throughout the thing is you need to have you need to discover who you are, all of who you are. And that includes the light stuff, the dark stuff, the great stuff, the not so great stuff, whatever terminology. But as human beings, in order to have a light side, we have to have a dark side.
Mhm.
And the dark side is part of us. And we spend our whole life shielding ourselves or avoiding the dark side. But the dark side isn't a bad part of us. It's just
Mhm.
a part of us. Like you can't have night and day, or the sun and the moon, like they all
Mhm.
coincide. And so all of who you are is that self discovery of all of who you are. And some of the stuff, I used to have more anger management issues that still flare up. And I love that part of me now, as opposed to
Mhm.
not liking that part.
Mhm.
And then there's the self acceptance piece. Accept all of who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the warts, everything. When you can accept who you are, how you've shown up for X number of years in your life, and how you're showing up today, you can then move into self like, self love, and all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
most people try to go from here to self love, and it's impossible.
Mhm.
You need to really accept you first. And so all of who you are is, like I said, is just the good, the bad, the ugly. And then you love each and every one of those parts equally. It's like when you have multiple children or multiple animals or whatever,
Yeah.
multiple friends, you love them unconditionally,
Mhm.
period.
Yes.
And that's really what's important. So love every part of you.
Love it. That's so beautiful. I think that's the perfect place to end. Thank you so much, Odette, for
Thank
joining
you.
me and for this conversation. And it was lovely. And I mean, I know that my listeners are going to take away so much from this. I know I have, and like I always do when we talk. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.